Mountaineer Nation, let's ride.
But Don Nealon's Mountaineers enjoy walking in where angels fear to tread. As the hills of West Virginia resound with the sounds of Golden Blue football. Here is Harris in trouble. Stiff arms the would-be tackler. Comes down over the 25 to 20. Goes around about it to 15 to 10 to 5. A touchdown, West Virginia. He did it.
Takes the Slater one-on-one with a defender. Look at Pat White.
West Virginia football. You know what that's about. They don't know what it's about. West Virginia football. Football, people. They shoot up on fire. No more air and helmet. Let them know. Leave no doubt tonight. Leave no doubt tonight. No doubt. They shouldn't have played the old Golden Blue.
It is a great night to be a Mountaineer wherever you may be.
What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into an impromptu live stream here on the Country Roads webcast. Wanted to get this out because the transfer portal officially opens tomorrow, so I wanted to give a little transfer target update as some guys that West Virginia have offered now. You can find, some of these names over on, our site that we're part of the network there at WVSportsNow.com. Articles on, each of these individual offers that I'm going to detail as far as some of the transfer targets for West Virginia potentially, and then some other names that I've added myself. Right now only lower level school players can enter the portal, and graduate transfers or players whose coaches have, made moves in the coaching carousel can enter the portal. But with that, West Virginia has offered some of those players. Got a list that includes some of those. Also, some other ones that I've added that have potential ties to West Virginia that I think West Virginia could potentially target or just wanted to put on the list due to them being in the portal and have those ties. And then in addition to that, of course, I wanted to update the transfer out list. Remember, I told you guys I'm going to try and keep a running list of transfers out for WVU transfers in. I know you guys probably seen recently tight end Mike O'Laughlin entering the transfer portal. I'll start off with that news here in a second, share the screen with you guys, and let you guys read the article there on WVU Sports Now about Mike O'Laughlin entering the transfer portal. And then towards the end here, signing day coming up later this month. West Virginia got a nice commitment today from a borderline 4-star defensive end, depending on which recruiting service you're looking at. 4-star on some, high 3-star on others. So I wanted to detail that and then talk about West Virginia's recruiting class and kind of just update you on the players West Virginia has committed, so you can see some of the names that you can expect to sign on National Signing Day later this month. And of course, we'll do another live stream once National Signing Day happens and do kind of a recap of the day for West Virginia, depending on how that goes. But transfer portal opening this week, so wanted to give an update on some potential transfer targets for West Virginia that they already have, and I may do another one here in the coming week or so and update this again. But as always, want to encourage you guys before I get into these topics, drop your WVU questions, comments, concerns, whether it be football related, recruiting related, basketball related, whatever you got. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I am streaming this live on the Country Roads webcast. YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch pages may take the audio and upload it to the podcast for you guys that like to listen to the audio only, which you can find the Country Roads webcast on all podcast platforms as well. But if you're in here on the YouTube side, do us a favor, whether you're watching this live or watching on a playback, give us the thumbs up, hit that like button. That really helps this video's performance and helps future videos performances as well. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. Helps us, helps you, helps get more of this Mountaineer sports content out to Mountaineer Nation. Just 1 second, I'm going to take a swig of my coffee and I'll get into the talking points I got. But like I said, you guys always encourage, drop your thoughts, questions along the way there in the chat, and I'll touch on them as we go along as well. All right, there we go. Much better. Much better. All right, so getting into it here with the first storyline I wanted to share with you guys, of course, the as far as transfer news goes, West Virginia has had 3 players transfer out. Now it's 4 with Mike O'Laughlin entering the transfer portal for the West Virginia Mountaineers. A lot of people may not know this. Actually, the second time that Mike O'Laughlin has entered the transfer portal, as he entered it when Dana Holgerson left and Neil Brown first came in. Did to come back, because that's the one thing you got to always keep in mind, especially this year when it comes to the transfer portal, is players can enter and then return to the team. Because I've heard that a lot of teams' rosters, not just West Virginia specifically, a lot of the roster, maybe even close to half, a third, whatever you want to say, is going to at least enter the transfer portal, because now with NIL, I think these players could enter the transfer portal, see what offers they can get, then they can go back to their current school, kind of see if they can match that. It's going to be that type of game right now in college football. Laughlin, a player who's really been struggling with injuries. He said in the past he was considering retiring for portal, being the Mountaineers starting tight end, but has been injured about each of the past 3 seasons, if I'm not mistaken. And here's an article from Mike Ostie over at WVU Sports Now talking about him entering the transfer portal that you guys can check out there. He had a great, let me see if I can, it was on his Twitter, Instagram, one of the two. But as you guys can see here, I won't read it for you guys because it's pretty long. You see 3 pages here. He released almost a little bit of an essay about his career and his injury struggles and how thankful he is, to Morgantown and West Virginia University. And I think that he was really, a hard-nosed guy, kept fighting back from those injuries. And when he played, he was a great player. So I hopefully wish him the best. If he doesn't retire and ends up somewhere else, hopefully he has a great season. But having said that, now let me show you guys my next thing that I wanted to show you guys. Of course, as I said, I'm going to update you guys throughout the season on the transfers out and transfers in, trying to keep a running list of it. Also going to do the same for the West Virginia roster throughout the offseason, try and keep a running list of it as well. I'll start that, once National Signing Day is over and West Virginia has the commits in and we kind of know what West Virginia's team is going to look like in the spring. I'll start putting out roster updates periodically throughout the offseason, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whenever, it needs to be updated with transfers coming in, transfers going out, because it's going to be a theme throughout the offseason. You're going to have a wave now when the portal opens here, but then again, after spring football, there will be another wave. So will be plenty of updates on this throughout the season. But in terms with that, let me show you guys the running list I have for you guys. And then I want to talk about some potential targets for West Virginia in the transfer portal. Let's see here. Pull this one up for you guys. All right. Well, it's loading. There we are. Apologies, everybody. Internet being a little bit extra slow today, but transfers out so far for West Virginia. I've detailed this, in the past. Of course, we'll continue to update it as it goes along. And as transfers come in, on another page, I've got the transfer targets for West Virginia, or at least what I'll be offered. Like I said, you can find that information on WVU Sports Now, among other West Virginia sites, of course. But transfers out so far: defensive back Mumu Ben Wahad, tight end Corbin Page, defensive back Charles Woods. Those have been detailed in the past. And then, of course, now you add Mike O'Laughlin to the list. So thus far, we got these 4 on the way out. All right, now let's get into the potential transfer targets right here for West Virginia. I'm going to try and break down by position as they kind of pop up. Like I said, some of these West Virginia has offered. I'll try and detail which ones that those are as I go through here. But starting at wide receiver position, we know West Virginia's going to need to add something there. Bryce Ford Wheaton moving on. We don't know the status of Sam James yet. West Virginia looks like they will only really have Jeremiah Aaron, Cortez Braham, Reese Smith, Grayson Malashevich, Jarrell Williams. So need to add some depth at wide receiver, especially with some of those players being inexperienced and some of those being former walk-ons on that list as well. Unknown at this time if Sam James is going to return for a final season for the Mountaineers as well. But starting with wide receiver here, Jimmy Horn Jr., West Virginia has offered him transfer from South Florida, highly regarded, good season. Tyrese Chambers, another one West Virginia has offered, a wide receiver from Florida International. Dre McCray, a wide receiver from Austin Peay, West Virginia has offered. Grant DeBose, a wide receiver from Charlotte, West Virginia has offered. Theo Weiss, I'm not sure if West Virginia has offered him yet or not, from Oklahoma. And then Ollie Jennings added on this list because he just recently entered the transfer portal. We know his West Virginia ties, started his career here, went to Old Dominion, had a great, couple of years there, and has hit the portal. I don't know if he would come back to West Virginia, honestly. In my personal opinion, I think the reason he transferred out was maybe some differences with the staff. I think a lot of that staff's probably still here, but with those ties, you never know. They may have not burnt that bridge. They may reach out and see, kind of fill it out. But in my opinion, I don't see him coming back to West Virginia, but I would love to see him do so. I think he's a talented player, but put him on here because of the ties, obviously. Tight end, West Virginia has offered a man named Kyle Morlock from a Division III school named Shorter. Offensive lineman, Gunnar Britton from Western Kentucky and Ajani Cornelius from Rhode Island, West Virginia has offered. Defensive lineman, West Virginia has offered two of them, two players, from Western Michigan on the defensive line, those being Andre Carter and Braden Fisk. Also offered Shane Cokes from Dartmouth and Anthony Goodlow from Tulsa. And here's the one I think everybody's probably most interested in. The last position that I've got potential targets for right now is among transfers, and that's defensive backs. I think we all know West Virginia needs to add some depth there. For one, they've got some young guys that may step up next season in those positions. When you think about Jacoby Spells, Andrew Wilson-Lamp, they looked pretty decent. And, of course, Malachi Ruffin will be back for a senior season, it is believed, at this time anyway, for West Virginia. So you've got a couple of guys there, but you're going to need to add depth. And more importantly, West Virginia is going to need to hit on these defensive back transfers. I think that's one of the things that hurt West Virginia last year was they missed on, the defensive back transfers they tried to add. The one way I've tried to compare it is I think West Virginia, if you look at the basketball team, not this season, but the season prior, they got some transfers from lower level schools and it didn't really work out and they missed. And then I think this year, if you look at the basketball team as it's constructed, they've got more Power 5 transfers and it seems like they're going to be a much better team this season because of that. So I'm not saying that West Virginia football needs to necessarily get more Power 5 transfers. I hope that they do, but I'm saying they definitely need to do a better job. I think they need to recognize that they missed, much like Bob Huggins did on the basketball side, and went out and got some better ones. And hopefully West Virginia can do that, particularly here in the defensive backfield. And here are some of the players West Virginia has offered or I think may be interested in. I think the first two here are the two that have been offered, and the other two I think are some guys that may come along the way. I'll describe why momentarily. But you got Kenny Solomon from Tulsa and Montre Miller from Kent State as the two that West Virginia has offered, I believe, transfers. And then J.J. Roberts from Wake Forest has entered the portal. He's a defensive back, and he's a West Virginia native. I'm not exactly sure where at. I want to say Charleston area, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Did have it, but slipping my mind right now, of course, as I go live. I'll think of it as soon as I get done. But West Virginia native, so you got to believe that we should reach out as a staff, and there's potential of him maybe to want to come back to his home state and finish his college career at, the state's university there in Morgantown, hopefully. So I put him on there for that potential reason. And then JQ Hardaway from Cincinnati is a player that's in the portal. And West Virginia, I think that the tie here is Rodney Gallagher, I think, has been reaching out to him. I remember him saying in a recent interview, if I'm not mistaken. So I think that there's potential to go after him as well. But West Virginia going to need to add some defensive backs. So just wanted to come out with a short little live stream impromptu. I wanted to make a video on this topic with the transfers, but I figured why not just, do it as a live stream with you guys, get some of your feedback along the way, possibly, potentially, and do the recruiting news as well and talk about the commit that West Virginia got. And I'll get into that talking point now as far as the commit that West Virginia added today. Like I said, borderline 4-star defensive end, depending on which recruiting I want to detail as well after talking about his here. WV Sports Now talking about his commitment of Zachariah Keith, the defensive end, adding to the 2023 recruiting class, which is a great sign for West Virginia as they're in the home stretch, signing day coming up later this month. So good to see them continuing to add good players to that class. and continue to move up in the rankings despite, some controversy, and some uncertainty in the last weeks of the season among the coaching staff, athletic department, what have you. But West Virginia gets the commitment from Zachariah Keith, believes it moves them up close to the top 25. We'll see exactly where here momentarily. But yes, 4-star defensive end Zachariah Keith. There you see the graphic shared. Yeah, here's. Anyway, I can read it from here. Keith, the 6'5", 250-pound defensive end from Douglas County High in Douglasville, Georgia, officially committed to WVU Sunday afternoon over offers from Buffalo, Coastal Carolina, Liberty, Marshall, Maryland, Memphis, Michigan State, South Alabama, Temple. Tennessee committed to Georgia Tech over the summer, but reopened his commitment in October. I'm guessing after the coaching change there at Georgia Tech, and he had official visits scheduled for Buffalo, Memphis in December, but it would appear one December visit was enough as he commits to West Virginia. So I'm not unsure if he'll take this Buffalo and Memphis visits. I'm guessing not, and hopefully he signs on the dotted line on National Signing Day. It says he originally scheduled a December 21st commitment with the choice to be in division. So by the sounds of it, he sounds like he may not go on those visits after all. Strong senior season at Douglas County, 76 tackles, 3 TFLs, 4 sacks, anchor of their defense. 247 Sports rates Keith as the 688th ranked recruit in the class, 64th defensive service, much higher on him, rating him as the 229th rated recruit in the class and the 25th ranked edge rusher in the nation and 22nd in Georgia. So top 25 defensive end in the nation there on On3. And I think that's where the 4-star pedigree probably comes from. It says Rivals hasn't rated him yet, but he holds a 5.5 Rivals rating. Sorry, my dog barking in the background. I don't know if the mic's picking that up or not. I'm guessing it is a little bit, but my fiance probably pulling up outside here. But that's the commitment West Virginia added. Want to detail the class as it stands right now as we get ready to approach signing day here in the coming weeks for the Mountaineers. But let me mute this real quick in case that's picking him up. Apologize for that. All right. So appreciate you guys that are tuned in here. Like I said, streaming live on the Country Roads webcast, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch pages, impromptu kind of stream. Just wanted to get out this info to you guys, of course, before tomorrow when the portal officially opens in regards to the transfer. But then I figured why not update the West Virginia recruiting class with the commitment of Zachariah Keith and moving forward where things stand with West Virginia as signing day is approaching here in the next couple of weeks. December 21st, the date for West Virginia. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, don't quote me on that. Actually, let me look that up real quick for you guys. But as I do that, one more time, I want to encourage you guys. I got one more topic I want to touch on, of course, and that's kind of going over the West Virginia recruiting class as it stands right now. But drop your WVU questions, comments, concerns. Before I get up out here, I'm not going to stay with you guys too long here on this live stream. But like I said, impromptu, so I realize the engagement may not be as much there as when I schedule it and let you guys know ahead of time. But like I said, wanted to be sure to get it out today. May break down shorter versions of this to put out on the YouTube channel. Also may put the audio of this up onto the podcast side for those of you that follow us on the podcast, which please do on any podcast platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. You can find us, just search Country Roads Webcast there. And if you're following us on Apple Podcasts there, leave us a rating. Any other podcast platform, be sure to share us around. And if you're in here on the YouTube side, whether you're watching this live or watching this on a playback, give us a thumbs up, drop us a like if you would. Really helps this video's performance and will help future videos performances here on the channel. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Helps us, helps you, helps get more of this Mountaineer football content out to Mountaineer Nation. The National Signing Day date, I think it's the 21st. Let me see here just for confirmation before I get in to break it down this recruiting class with guys. December 21st. Well, that's 2021. If it's the same day, then it was 2021, December 21st last year. So maybe that's where I'm getting the day, but I don't know if it'll stay consistent and be that again this year. But if so, it's coming up here. What are we now? 17 days away from the 21st, but we know it's going to be that latter portion of December no matter what. So we're going to take a look at the West Virginia recruiting class here. I'll share my screen with you guys momentarily. Go through the West Virginia recruiting class after the addition of Zachariah Keith. I'm going to use 247 Sports here for that. Like I said, plenty of recruiting services. On3 was also mentioned in that article. Of course, you got Rivals, ESPN. I think Yahoo still does it as well. So there's plenty of recruiting services to look at, all depending on preference. But let me go to the chat here, see what we got. Luke Bart says, wish they would at least go after some more Power Fives. Recruiting classes looking good. Hope they all sign in early. Luke Bart, appreciate you always tuning in and chiming in. Of course, wanted to add that. But yeah, I agree. I think that once the portal opens tomorrow, we'll start to hear more about West Virginia going after some potential Power Five guys. Because like I said, right now, it's only players that have coaches have had coaching changes that can enter the portal, or grad transfers, or players from lower level schools. So that's why it's mainly FCS targets on that list, besides guys with potential West Virginia connections. Sorry, I can't think of the word that I've added to the list there. But like I said, JJ Roberts, that's a Power Five from Wake Forest. Who knows where he's going to end up? But I think West Virginia could potentially go after him. And I think starting tomorrow, we will start to see more Power Five names that'll pop up on the transfer offer list. And I'll update this list as that happens and try and get another update out to you guys, whether it be in a live stream or pre-recorded video, as that happens. And West Virginia does add more Power Fives to the list. But I agree with you. Hopefully they do. But yeah, recruiting class looking good, has the potential to be the best one yet for Neil Brown and the staff, which would be great. Hopefully I think there's some players that can really contribute right away, specifically thinking about guys like Traylon Ray and Rodney Gallagher. I mentioned West Virginia, West Virginia needing help at receiver. Those guys can do that for sure. So appreciate that, Luke Barton. I agree with you. What's going on, Kenny? Appreciate you always being here, man, tuning in and chiming in. You guys go check out Kenny as well over on his channel, WVU Mountain Lair with Kenny. Eric Cruz, what's going on? Hey, Dad, how's it going? Good info. Keep it going. Enjoy the updates. Appreciate that. Always appreciate you guys tuning in and chiming in. That's always encouraged. Any thoughts, questions, concerns you got? Love the back and forth as we continue to try and grow the Country Roads webcast community throughout Mountaineer Nation. But that being said, continue dropping them in there if you guys like, as I touch on my last, talking point, and then I'll hit up some of your guys' comments, questions before I get out here. Keep it kind of shorter here on this live stream. The recruiting news side, of course, I talked about the commitment, but now let's take a look at the class here as we are in early December, just a few short weeks now away from signing day. Pull this one up here now. All right. So hard commits for West Virginia has 20 so far. I'm actually kind of surprised that there's 20. I figured West Virginia would only add, 16 to 18 high school commits. I figured they'd go after more transfers, but I think West Virginia is going to add a lot of transfers because now it's kind of more on a running thing. You don't have to limit who you bring in to 25. You just have to keep your roster below, 85, I believe is the limit. So West Virginia can add as many as they want as long as guys are moving out. And West Virginia's now at 4 transfer out. So that'll be 4 more spots that open up. But overall, right now, here's on 247 Sports, as far as the ranking is concerned, 27th. So right there near the top 25 after the commitment of Zachariah Keith. It's now been factored in. But looking through the class here, I think this is, let me see. Yeah, this is organized by their rating here, by their score. As you see, Rodney Gallagher, the highest rated, 90 plus, giving him that 4-star rating. Big time receiver, top 25 receiver, top 300 player in the country. Big time recruit, one of the bigger ones West Virginia's landed in recent years. I think he's going to come in right away and make an impact. Like I said in recent interview, he's even compared himself to Tavon Austin. I think he's that type of skill set. I think there's only one Tavon Austin. That's why the video is titled that, obviously. But I think that he's a player with great speed, great agility, and that type of player that we haven't seen in quite a while at West Virginia. Those guys that we used to always have, those Noel Devine, Jock Sanders, Tavon Austin types. Rodney Gallagher's going to bring that back next season for the Mountaineers, I think. So super excited about him. He's a 4-star. And then you got another 4-star receiver coming in that could probably make an immediate impact. Rodney Gallagher from Pennsylvania. This one from Florida, and Traylon Ray, 6'2", 190, top 50 receiver in the country. Another guy that can make an impact. Then you got a linebacker I think can make an impact, borderline 4-star player, Josiah Trotter, 88 rating. You see there, 6'2", 230 out of Pennsylvania. Then you get a defensive back here, Josiah Jackson from Ohio, good size, 6'1", 175 pounds, top 50 defensive back in the country. Josiah Trotter there, as you see, top 50 linebacker in the country, top 10 player in the state of Pennsylvania. Josiah Jackson, top 15 player in the state of Ohio. James Hurd, who's a borderline 4-star as well on some sites. I believe he's being recruited as a bandit for West Virginia, if I'm not mistaken. 6'2", 218, top 50 linebacker in the country, number 9 in the state of New Jersey. Justin Benton, really strong defensive lineman, another borderline 4-star. You see there, 88 rating, top 60 player in the country, top 50 at his position there in the state of Georgia, 6'2", 275 pounds. Another defensive back, also from Ohio, funny enough, same school, both last name Jackson. We got Jordan Jackson and Josiah Jackson. I believe they're twin brothers, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that. I know they're brothers, though. I'm pretty much 100% sure about that. Jordan Jackson listed as an athlete. Believe he's playing DB as well. I think they both will be 5'11", 175, a little bit shorter than Josiah, but similar size, similar rating on both, high ranking 3 stars, 88 plus grades, top 40 athlete, number 17 athlete in the state of Ohio. Johnny Williams, an offensive lineman with great size, another fairly recent commit for the Mountaineers. As you see there, 87 plus grade, 6'7", 315 pounds. So you love that size coming in as a true freshman. He's a guy that could, I think, contribute early and maybe, who knows, get in on the action as West Virginia looks to add to their offensive line depth next season. And you wonder if Doug Nestor decides to return to the Mountaineers or not. He could maybe factor in there with that size. You got to think that's the potential to maybe get some early playing time. I know it's rare for offensive linemen to play as freshmen, but we've seen the Mountaineers do it with some talented guys in the past, Zach Frazier and Wyatt Milam here recently, and it's paid off in the future. West Virginia may not have to rely on Johnny Williams to start, but I think with that size, he's a guy that could get some playing time at 6'7", 315. And then here, of course, the most recent Mountaineer commit that we just talked about, Zachariah Keith, also from Georgia, defensive end there on the edge, 6'5", 250, top 65 player nationally, top 65 player in the state of Georgia at his position. Jaheim White, who had an absolutely monster senior season at running back. I think he's going to just add to what is already an amazingly deep and talented West Virginia backfield. 5'9", 180 from the state of Pennsylvania, top 50 running back in the country, top 16 player in the state of Pennsylvania, 87 plus grade there. Elijah Caldwell, Mountaineers adding another freshman receiver here, 6'1", 190, 3-star guy out of South Carolina, top 15 player in the state of South Carolina. Mountaineers added a tall defensive end here. I think that's going to have to, but a little bit more of a development guy with his body size. They're only, 6'6", 195, going to have to add some weight before he can contribute at the next level. But I think coming out of Kentucky, he's a top 10 player in the state there at the position, 86 plus grade, top 100 defensive end in the country. So another good player West Virginia adding to the line. And I think one thing the staff has shown, if you can talk about a positive among this coaching staff, it's building in the trenches, the strength of the Mountaineer team. I think this season, you can look at it specifically, was the defensive line and the offensive line. So it looks like they're continuing to do that and continuing that trend. Another good-sized offensive lineman from the state of Pennsylvania, Cooper Young, inside lineman, probably going to be a guard or a center type player, most likely a guard, 6'5", 280, 3-star ranking, top 25 player in the state of Pennsylvania. And then the Mountaineers did add a quarterback to this class. They did have one quarterback committed in the past, number Jaheim Jeter. They decided to go away from him and go another direction. Believe he ended up committing to East Carolina, if I'm not mistaken. But since then, the Mountaineers added a commit a commitment from a quarterback from the state of North Carolina. They're in Charlotte Catholic High School. Top 61 player in the nation in his position, number 32 quarterback in the state of North Carolina. So that's the Mountaineers commit that. And then you get a legacy player here in Torrey Johnson Jr. If you guys remember Torrey Johnson, he used to play for the Mountaineers in the early 2000s. Adding him as he's listed as a wide receiver here, but 6'4", 210. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe the plan is for him to play tight end. And West Virginia has done that in the past. Mike O'Laughlin, who we mentioned earlier, if you look at his little write-up essay thing he did in his tribute to West Virginia announcing his transfer, he talked about coming to West Virginia as a 6'5", 210 receiver initially, and that worked out pretty well for the Mountaineers. And I think Torrey Johnson's a player that could add weight and contribute as a tight end, but if not, he may end up being a wide receiver, but I think he'll contribute to the Mountaineers in the future. Top 35 player in the state of Virginia. Ben Cutter, another linebacker the Mountaineers added, looks like a tackling machine. I think he could end up being a good Mike linebacker for the Mountaineers in the future. Also coming from the state of North Carolina, 6'1", 210, top 35 player in the state there. Then you get another Mountaineer legacy player here again. Mountaineers got 3 of them in this class so far, if I'm not mistaken, maybe only 2. But Corey McIntyre Jr., you guys remember Corey McIntyre, former fullback for the Mountaineers, played in the NFL for a long time with the Cincinnati Bengals, if I'm not mistaken. But Corey McIntyre Jr., 6'4", 280 defensive lineman out of the state of Florida there, top 200 in the state, 3-star. Then you got Nick Cray, another offensive lineman, probably going to be a guard, 6'5", 285. Top 30 player in the state of Pennsylvania. And then another big offensive tackle for the Mountaineers here, Christison St. John from Florida as well, there in the Orlando area, top 200 player in the state. And then, oh yes, there is a third legacy player, I thought, as well, Noah Braham, of course, another tight end for the Mountaineers, 6'2", 225. So the Mountaineers adding a top player in the state of West Virginia, as you see there, number 3 player in the state. West Virginia has done a great job recruiting the state and securing in-state recruits under Neil Brown and the staff. And looks like they're going to continue to do that as well. So that's an update on the class as it stands now. At least the players committed to the Mountaineers. Not necessarily all these guys will sign on the dotted line on National Signing Day. We know that there's tendency to be flips, but at least there's a list of names you can look at to potentially see sign on the dot on National Signing Day. But when that date comes up here in a couple of weeks, we will get back with you guys with an update and a recap of National Signing Day for the Mountaineers, whether that be a live cap or a pre-recorded video. But sorry about that. Had to wet my whistle a little bit one more time, but that's all I kind of want to touch on with you guys. That's all the talking points I had. I want to catch up on some of your guys' comments here in the chat before I get up out of here, but appreciate you guys tuning in, whether it be on the Country Roads Webcast, Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch. Like I said, if you're on the YouTube, one more time, drop us a like, subscribe if you haven't already. Helps us, helps you, helps get more of this Mountaineer sports content out to Mountaineer Nation. But just wanted to touch on some of the potential transfer targets for WVU, as well as a little bit of a recruiting update with National Signing Day coming up here shortly. Shane Statmiller, I appreciate you tuning in, man. The first time I think I've seen you in here. Hopefully you come back. Hit us with a subscription if you're a big Mountaineer fan. He says, yo, from Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania, let's go Mountaineers. Indeed, always, let's go Mountaineers. Appreciate you tuning in there and chiming in. Luke Bart, what's going on, brother? Really is unbelievable job in recruiting based on the last couple years on the field. I'm sure he's good talking in homes with parents. Yeah, if that's one thing we can say about Neil Brown, we know he's a good salesman, right? He sells us as fans year after year. So I think that he is a great recruiter, and that's one thing he has proven. And, that's one thing I've said in the past. If you watch, previous episodes, that's what's kind of is curious and what's got us scratching our heads as Mountaineer football fans, right? Is there's some disconnect because everything else in the program, recruiting to the 5th quarter program, is doing pretty well, and he's doing a great job of, but it's just not translating to wins on the field. And I think he's continuing to get better with each class that he's had so far at West Virginia. And it looks like this one has the potential to be his best. Fingers crossed that we can sign most of those players that are committed in this get them to sign national letter of intents on this upcoming signing day. And I think we could secure, one of the better classes that he's had. I think the highest ranked class in school history is 21st, if I'm not mistaken, 22nd maybe. So we're on the cusp of, getting close to that. 27th there on 240 Sports, I believe 20th on Novels, following the commitment of Zachariah Keith today, if I'm not mistaken. Silas says, let's go. He says he'll go back and watch later. Just got home. I appreciate you hopping in just for a second to comment, and appreciate you going back and catching the playback. And yeah, that's good. If you're popping in here late and you didn't get to see, the topics I talked about, you could rewind the video. Even though I'm live here, you can rewind it and still, pop in the chat, whatever you want or whatever. But if not, you can pop out now. Once I end the stream here in the next few minutes, the playback will be up on our channel and you can watch it in its entirety. And Silas, appreciate you always being loyal and tuning in, no matter which, whether it's live or on the playback, and chiming in as well. And appreciate you, friend. Let's go indeed. Eric Cruz says, if only Coach Brown can get things fixed and coaching decisions and the staff, his recruit has never been a question. Great guy overall. We just need the W's. Yeah. And I think that's a consistent theme throughout, Mountaineer Nation, is we all like Neil Brown. We all think he's a good guy. And I think we want him to be successful because we like him. It's just, the sample size now and what we've seen, we're all, very much in question of it on game day in those aspects. So I agree with you. Get things fixed with, coaching decisions on game day, maybe make some staff changes this off season, because recruiting is great, and it continues to be great. And, as someone mentioned earlier, he's, doing it selling air essentially because the wins aren't there. So, he's recruiting, selling air, right? So doing a great job. Mountaineer Lair with Kenny says they all look great. Hope they translate to the field. Indeed. Shane Statmiller, are you okay with Brown staying another year? I'm hot and cold on it. Yes and no. Personally, it's not the decision I would have made, but I think with the position West Virginia had put themselves in, ultimately with the timing, it had gotten so late. That's what they had to do, was keep him around for the time being. But, I think that goes back to waiting so long to make the decision to, fire Shane Lyons or whatever move you were going to make. West Virginia did that a little late, among other things. So it goes back to questioning, the administration and stuff, which is a whole nother topic I'll digress on. But so my answer to your question, ultimately, personally, it's not what I would have done, not what I wanted. I think to reunite the fan base and kind of reignite the fan base as well, and maybe not have to potentially worry about season ticket sales next year, which they're going to have to do something to help with that. I don't know if it's going to be staff changes or what, but something's going to have to give if they want people to show up to the game and buy into supporting this team next season. But having said that, in my personal opinion, I would have just cut ties, brought in some, fresh start, and reunite the fan base, get everyone on board again. But I think with the timing of it, they made the best decision that they could because they waited so long. So ultimately, I wouldn't have made this decision, but I think it's what you had to do at this point. And us as fans just kind of got to get behind this team and hope that he turns it around and starts getting results on the field. Because like I said, I like Coach Brown as a guy. I think he's a great guy, great person, doing a great job recruiting. Think this recruiting class is going to end up great. And so just going to support the team and hope for the best. WVU Mountain Lair with Kenny says, I know Rodney Gallagher will, and plus Trotter will. Yeah, I think Trotter at linebacker is going to do great things next season. He could contribute early. And Ben Cutter is really underrated. I don't know if he'll contribute next season, but I think in the future he could be a Mike linebacker for the Mountaineers. I think Trotter could get on the field next season, though. But let's not count out guys that are already here. Trey Lathan, Lee Cobb is coming back. But you will need some guys to fill in at the wheel linebacker spot. Not sure Lance Dixon's status. He can return. Edgery Lowe's moving on. So I think Lathan could move over to that wheel linebacker position. Don't know where Trotter's going to play yet, but who knows, could play even Bandit. But I think Trotter has potential. I think Rodney Gallagher definitely plays for the Mountaineers next season. And my prediction right now, early bowl prediction, way too early before he's even signed his letter of intent, is he'll be the starting slot receiver for the Mountaineers. Blake Green says, I hope we go after Wake Forest transfer DB J.J. Roberts, former Gatorade Player of the Year in WV. Yes, glad you mentioned that. Mentioned that earlier on the potential transfer targets. Don't know if you got a chance to catch that, Blake, but go back and catch on the playback if you haven't yet. But he's one I added on the potential transfer targets list. West Virginia hasn't offered him yet, but I think that he could definitely be in the mix. That's Power 5 transfer. That's a position of need, certainly for the Mountaineers at defensive back. Something they missed on in the transfer portal last year that they got to hit on this year. And yes, a former West Virginia native, Gatorade Player of the Year in the state of West Virginia. So I think you've got to call and hopefully try and get him to come home to finish out his collegiate career indeed. Shane Statmiller again in here says, I'm bummed Deion's going to Colorado. I know he wasn't on quote unquote the list, but what if, wow, blows my mind, he could have been our guy. Yeah, I think ultimately now in hindsight, if West Virginia would have ultimately been going under a coaching change, maybe they would have had a better shot at Deion than I previously thought, because in my eyes, he was a pipe dream guy all along. But I think program-wise, Colorado and West Virginia are definitely very comparable. Honestly, I was personally surprised that he chose Colorado out of the 3 finalists that there was believed to be with, USF, Cincinnati, and Colorado. Cincinnati kind of was, a ready-made program to come in and have success with how Luke Fickell had set that up before he left for Wisconsin. So I thought he may go there. Plus with Cincinnati going into the Power 5 next season, he would get to go into the Power 5 with that decision. USF, I know that was probably less likely just because not being in the Power 5, but I thought, with it being in Florida where he's, always been, essentially, playing in college there and having his ties there now with Jacksonville State. But ultimately he chose Colorado, which I thought was the least likely of the 3. Very interesting. Going out to the West Coast, we'll see what he can do and see how his turnaround skills are there, because I think Colorado won, 1 or 2 games this year. So going to be interesting to see how fast he can turn that around if he does turn it around. But I love Deion Sanders. Was always, one of my very favorite football players that I ever had, and one of my earliest favorite football players that I ever had when I first started watching football when I was younger. So I hope that he does have success there. And I think West Virginia may have had a shot if they would have decided to, conduct a coaching search. But, that goes back to, like I said earlier, just being too late in the game and having to ultimately make the decision to keep Neil Brown then. Kenny says he looks for the legacy players to do well as well. Yeah, I love getting those legacy players. Love that we're going after not only in-state recruits. This Neil Brown regime's done a great job recruiting in-state players. Believe it's 3 years in a row they've signed the top player in the state of West Virginia all 3 years. And along with that, they've done a great job going after legacy players as well. And I think getting those are important because I think in-state players and legacy players, they already know how much it means. And I think that maybe goes to a little bit more of that blue collar mentality, and they get out there and they fight a little bit more, and it means more to them. And I think that's good. You want those type of guys in your program. So I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. But that being said, really appreciate you guys tuning in here, kind of impromptu. So really glad to see the engagement that I got without it being pre-scheduled. If you guys, if it was your first time here, please come back to these live streams all the time. Sometimes they're impromptu like this. So when they are, one of the best things to do, if you haven't hit the subscribe button, do that. But also that little notification bell right there beside the subscribe button on YouTube, and it'll notify you when we go live, because sometimes we will do impromptu ones like this. But always appreciate you guys tuning in and chiming in here on the Country Roads webcast. Plenty more Mountaineer football content, even though we're getting into the off season. Like I said, signing day coming up. So recruiting is going to be a hot topic, whether it be high school recruits or transfers. And I'll continue to update you on both of those, as well as the West Virginia roster as it continues to progress through the off season. And then I also have some end of season stat things I'm going to do. I might put it out on the podcast side and also here on YouTube. Our season prediction roundtable that we do every year, kind of the results from that. And then I also want to talk about the final season stats and how the Mountaineers did, both as a team and individually. So that's kind of some of the stuff you can look for on the horizon football wise, as well as some other, Q&A live streams and stuff coming down the pipe. But also, if you guys are Mountaineer basketball fans as well, I'm sure you are, as most of us are here that are West Virginia fans in general. But CRW Hoops podcast, West Virginia basketball post-game shows coming up here on the channel, and the post-game shows that are live are streamed on the Facebook and the Twitch as well. So if you're tuned in there to the Country Roads webcast, you can find those there. But if you're on those, I encourage you to hop over to the YouTube side, where you get some pre-recorded video content and a little bit extra Mountaineer sports content than the live streams you will find on Facebook and Twitch. But appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, I'm Jordan Cruz, and until next time, let's go Mountaineers.